Thanks, everybody. Glad to see you all here. As you already know, we're here to talk about Summit's CO2 pipeline proposal and commenting on the draft environmental impact statement for the Otter Tail-Wilkin part of the pipeline in particular. Oops, there we go, too fast. We already did a quick introduction to the CURE staff. We're also going to talk about just giving a general overview of the project, Summit's Carbon Solutions project, then an overview of the process here in Minnesota, including going over what in the heck a DEIS even is, and then what's in Summit's DEIS. And then finally, we're going to wrap up with how you guys can write a good comment and how you submit that comment. So just for those who don't already know, although I'm sure most, if not all of you do know, we're talking about Summit's Midwest Carbon Express. They've called it themselves the world's largest CO2 pipeline. It's going to cover Iowa, Nebraska, South Dakota, North Dakota, and of course, Minnesota. Approximately 2,000 miles. I think it's closer to 2,200 miles now and cost about $5.5 billion. So this pipeline is connecting about 30 ethanol facilities across that 5-state footprint. And in Minnesota, it's right now they're looking at about 240 miles. So I think you can see my cursor. So we've got this one up in Fergus Falls. That's 28 miles about. Then there's this segment from Candy, Ohio County up in Atwater through Granite Falls, Lamberton, Heron Lake, ending in Jackson County at the Iowa border. And then this third branch going over to Fairmont in Martin County. So it's 6 ethanol plants in total so far that have been proposed. And then you can see from this map, there's also, sorry, the Navigator Heartland Greenway. That was the dark blue, and there was going to be one facility, about 12 miles of pipeline from the Iowa border into Welcome, Minnesota. But that project was canceled in October of last year. So that brings us to this lovely page. So this is a lot, but I think it's an important part of understanding what in the heck's going on with the pipeline permitting process. So whenever somebody wants to permit a pipeline, especially CO2 pipeline, you have to go through a specific process that the law has set out. So the first step is submitting an application. So Summit submitted their application back in September of 2022, and that opened up an initial comment period where folks could weigh in to say whether or not the application was complete. Then the Public Utilities Commission, which is in charge of this permitting process for pipelines, took a look at all those comments and decided that yes, in fact, the application was complete, and also that the project required environmental review. They also decided that that environmental review had to take the form of the most robust process that we have in Minnesota, which is called the environmental impact statement. So that completeness decision kicked off the beginning of this environmental review, which is where we are now. So back in, some of you might remember, there were meetings in May up in Fergus Falls and Breckenridge. And that was coincided with a comment period. And so that was the first step of environmental review here, an environmental assessment worksheet and a scoping document. So the scoping document says, what are the issues, environmental, social, economic, that we're going to need to look at for this pipeline in the final environmental impact statement. So that happened, like I said, in May. Then the Department of Commerce, which is doing the environmental review for the Public Utilities Commission, compiled all those comments and delivered the draft scoping document to the Public Utilities Commission that said, okay, yep, this is what's going to be in the environmental impact statement. So then they took some more time to go ahead and start drafting that environmental impact statement. And that's what was released on January 23rd, the draft environmental impact statement. So all of these gray boxes, we've already gone through this process. So we're actually right here, but this just happened. And so now we're here. There are draft environmental impact statement meetings happening this week. We'll talk about that later, but tomorrow, Wednesday and Thursday, virtually, and then up in Otter Tail and Wilkin counties. There's also a comment period that's open. That's why many of you are here. And that's open through February 23rd at 4:30 p.m. So after all these comments are submitted, then the Department of Commerce is again going to kind of compile what everybody said and then issue the final environmental impact statement. That will go to the Public Utilities Commission. Again, there'll be some public hearings and a comment period. And this is where the scoping the scoping decision comes back in. So when the commission is looking at the final environmental impact statement, they have to make sure that it's adequate, or it includes all the things that were in the scoping decision. So that's what's going to happen once the final EIS is issued. Folks will be commenting on the adequacy. I'm sure we'll have this type of webinar again, so don't worry if you don't remember this for now. You'll see this kind of weird thing here, the administrative law judge report. So while this environmental review process is happening at the Public Utilities Commission, there's a separate but related process happening in front of an administrative law judge, who is like a regular judge, but only focuses on decisions at state agencies like the Public Utilities Commission or the DNR. So they're going to look at much of the same information and deliver their suggestions to the Public Utilities Commission. That ends. So once all of this has happened, the Public Utilities Commission will meet again, taking all this into consideration, and then issue its final permit decision. So importantly, you can kind of see, again, we're through the most of the stuff at the top, but the little bubbles with asterisks and with the pound sign are where there are opportunities for public comment and public meetings. That was a lot of information, I'm sorry. So again, what is a DEIS? It's a draft environmental impact statement. It's the PUC's first attempt at characterizing all of the potential environmental, social, economic, and other impacts of a proposed project. Again, it's based on what is laid out in the scoping document. So for this DEIS, as I've said, there's a public comment opportunity open through Friday, February 23rd at 4:30 p.m. Not entirely sure why the PUC has decided all comment periods end at 4:30 p.m., but these are the rules we will abide by. And then there are the public meetings tomorrow, February 6th at Breckenridge High School from 6 to 9 p.m. Wednesday, there are 2 at the Big Woods Event Center in Fergus Falls from 1 to 4 p.m. and 6 to 9 p.m. And then there is a virtual one on Thursday from 6 to 9 p.m. There's a link in here. I'm hoping maybe somebody can put that in the chat as well. But as Anne alluded to earlier, we'll also have this available after the presentation. I will personally be at all of those meetings. I will try and wear my Cure gear. So if you happen to be at any of these and want to come say hi, please feel free to do so. So now what we all came here for. What's in Summit's DEIS? So first of all, as some of you who maybe already looked at this found out, there are 3 routes that they're actually looking at. This RA, which stands for Route Alternative, RA North, which is this top line, RA Hybrid, the dotted line that comes across here, and then RA South, which is the black line. So RA South is what Summit originally proposed. The other 2 are just alternatives that try and avoid some of the river crossings and some of the wetland crossings that Summit's initial route would cross. The DEIS is also looking at alternatives to the project itself. So ones that they looked at included energy efficiency and improved agricultural practices. So energy efficiency is specifically at the ethanol plant itself. And then improved ag practices by farmers providing the corn to the ethanol facility. And then all environmental impact statements require this consideration of what's called a no action alternative. And a no action alternative just says, if we didn't build this project, what would happen? So you'll see that's also in the document. And then I picked up these 2 appendices because I think they're probably especially important to folks who live along the line. There's the Agricultural Protection Plan, that's found in Appendix E, and then the Rupture Study, that's in Appendix G. So the Rupture Study was ordered and done by a contractor from the Department of Commerce, and just talks about what kind of impacts might occur in the event of a rupture. So there's a lot of generalities in Summit's DEIS, not a lot of detail. I don't think that's uncommon for a DEIS, but that just means, things for folks to weigh in on. So here are just a few things that we highlighted. There's a lot of information. It's a 356-page document, so this is just scratching the surface. But for water use, we found out that it's to be determined how much Summit will need for construction. They provide a couple estimates, but there is a statement in the DEIS that says, well, we're not really sure. We'll figure that out later. For operations, Summit has estimated that it will need 13 million gallons per year. And I believe they said, I'm gonna have to check again, but I believe the DEIS says it's coming from a well on site at the ethanol facility. And then for water quality, there's a couple notes here, but two that are really impactful or important are that RA South, which is again Summit's preferred route, crosses a superficial beach ridge aquifer in Otter Tail County. I will admit I am not a scientist, so I don't actually know what a superficial beach ridge aquifer is or looks like. I do know that it's an aquifer, and I do know that the DNR noted in early comments that it was concerned that pipeline construction in this area, because of these features, could be prone to breaching that aquifer, and that, as we've found out from other construction, especially of pipelines, that those impacts can be long-term. And then the second thing under water quality is the use of horizontal directional drilling methods, especially under larger bodies of water, that can result in drilling fluid being released into waterways. We saw that with Line 3. And then for land, there's a lot of discussion about the short-term impacts to agricultural lands, but we know that ignores a lot of the anecdotal stories and scientific studies about long-term impacts of pipeline construction that have come out of, again, Line 3, but other types of infrastructure projects like these types of pipelines. And then finally, safety. So there's no clear information about the measures Summit will take to protect those living along the route in the event of a rupture. They do say in the DEIS that they'll provide everybody who lives within 1,000 feet of the pipeline a CO2 monitor. But then in the rupture study, again, that's in Appendix G, they say that they anticipate that because of the nature of an actual rupture, the impact would be, or the release would essentially be immediate. And so monitors would not be effective at that point. And then, so there's really no discussion about what the solution is in that situation. And then there's no consideration whatsoever of setting any potential setback requirements. So again, that's really broad, but just kind of giving you a taste of things that, we think are most important for people to know. So you're interested, you're here. How are you going to write a good comment? So first, make it personal. You want to describe yourself and why you care about the issue. You don't necessarily have to live along the route. I think obviously that's natural and that's great. But you might have family who live up there. You might live along the route from Jackson to Candy, Ojai County. You might like fishing in the Otter Tail River. You might just care about, pipelines in general, whatever it is. Just make it clear why you're commenting. You also really want to answer the question. So here that question is, what information needs to be clarified or included in the draft EIS to ensure that the final EIS is complete and accurate? So that's the question that's at the top of, or in the notice of this draft EIS. And it can be frustrating because, the DEIS at this point, the question isn't whether or not the project should be approved, but that's what, we're all thinking of, right? But it's just whether the DEIS is adequately describing the potential environmental, social, economic, and other impacts of the proposed project. That will go into the eventual decision about whether it should be approved, but right now the focus is just on what's in the DEIS and what's missing. That said, don't limit yourself entirely. If there's something that doesn't appear in the DEIS that you think is missing, say so. You know, especially if you're living along the route, you know that area better than the Department of Commerce folks ever could because they don't live up there. Um, and most importantly, this is a public comment period. This is your chance to be heard, so you should use it. And then this is more about the logistics. This will be available to you again afterwards. Don't feel like you have to take this down. Lots of places to get this information. So first, you can submit it online with the Department of Commerce. There's a link here, pretty easy to go to. I think I'll even see if I can show you guys later how to do that. You just click submit a comment. There's a nice little text box with, it asks for your name, type it up, or you can submit your own document if you've typed up your thoughts. I would do that a lot. You can also email it to Andrew Levi, who works at the Department of Commerce. His email address is there. Just make sure you include draft EIS comment. And then this number, 22422, is called the docket number. It's just how the Department of Commerce identifies different issues. Just make sure you include that in the subject line. And then we've got CURE's website, of course, which I will show you in a moment. We've set up a really easy comment tool for you to use if you're interested. And then if you like to write out your thoughts, you can always send it to also Andrew, but via US mail to that address. I know we got a few comments in writing last time around. So just a couple of things to remember. You're going to always want to include the docket number in your submission of your comments. So that's docket number 22422. Again, this will be all over the place. You can always email us if you forget. So don't worry if you forget after today. And then you really need to submit your comment by Friday, February 23rd at 4:30 p.m. Central Time. This is not one of the situations where they might consider it afterwards, but I would really strongly urge you to get it in by that time at the very latest. All right, so beyond all the comments, how else to stay? You can stay involved. I know a lot of you are already on our landowner meetings with PEG, but you can always keep informed with our website, our Facebook, engage in the regulatory process overall. You can subscribe to the docket. We're happy to help you figure that out. It's not the most intuitive. And then get the word out. Let your networks know about the comment opportunity and about the public meetings. The only way, again, this is a public process. These things are here for you to get information, to get your questions answered, and to provide feedback. So that was a very quick overview. I think I'm going to try and let's see if I can do this effectively. I'm going to try and show you CURE's. Don't know how to do this well. So are you seeing CURE's website? Maybe Peg can just hop on and tell me yes.
We are, Sarah.
Perfect. Thank you, Peg. Got nervous. I've been talking to myself for 10 minutes there for a second.
No.
So this is, okay, good. So we've got our website comment form up. So this is on the CURE website. We've got the link in the document. I'm sure we can get it in the chat too. This is what you'll find. On the left here is just kind of more of what I've been saying. Quick overview, why you should comment, that important deadline. And then over here, this is where we've suggested how you kind of outline your comment. So again, introduce yourself, describe what you think is wrong or what could be included. Explain the impacts that are of concern to you and why it's important. So we have outlined a couple more, like I just did, of the potential impacts or issues and concerns that you might want to talk about. So you just click on one of these things and then it drops down. I think a lot of you are already familiar with our comment tools, but here's just a quick overview. So for example, the CO2 rupture impact zone, we describe kind of what might be worrying about that. So then scroll all the way down, you'll have the information you fill out, your name, all that good information. This is already set up for you because that's what you want to include in your comment. And then this is where you would type in your own information. So you can, if you need to, kind of take from here. I would suggest if you can at all personalize it, that would be great, but you can of course copy and paste if you need to. And
Sarah?
then you'll just, yeah, go for it, Peg.
So what I would recommend for you to do is to read through the different areas that in the comment tool for the issues of concerns, the blue areas there. And then I would cut and paste your concerns into a Word document and construct your comments in the Word document, because the box there is pretty small and it's kind of hard to work in. So if you're in your Word document, you can do your introduction, you can put bullet points or take bits and pieces of these. There's under each one, there's oftentimes more than one concern. You might pick, one might be more of an issue than not. I wouldn't recommend that you copy all of them and put them into the comment tool, because it's really about how you personalize it to yourself and relate it to the draft EIS. And so Sarah's already done a lot of the work for you here, pulling out things that we think would be of most interest in the DIS for landowners and the general community. And you can paste that paragraph in and then stylize it yourself, and then copy once you're happy with your comments and how they look, then just highlight it all, copy it, and then paste it into that box. This tool is designed that once you put your address in, it automatically determines who your representatives are and who it needs to go to. So you don't have to worry about putting anything into Dear Elected Official. It will automatically populate that part based on your address and zip code. So I hope that helps you understand. And then there's links on the page if you wanted to look again at the EIS. It is like 400 pages long, but there's also a summary page if you'd rather look at just the summary. And then I believe there's a link on here too that tells you when the public meetings are. We also sent it out, the DIS notice of availabilities there. We also sent it out in the email that we sent out, and we'll be sending another email out to remind folks next week, and we can put it in there again as well if that's helpful for folks.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Peg. Yeah, I think that's an excellent idea about kind of typing your comments up in a Word document or somewhere else first. Yeah, because that box is a little small. Perfect. Okay. So, and then you'll just obviously submit your comment there once you're done. So I think that is it for my part of the presentation. So I'll stop sharing. Thank you all for listening. I know that was a lot of information. I see we've got a lot in the chat, but hopefully folks have been kind of answering as I've gone through. But Peg, are there any questions you saw that you'd like me to answer?
I just think some folks have had trouble getting on, so I would just reiterate that we are recording this and we will post it on our website. So if you missed part of it because you were coming in and out, you can certainly get it there. And this is a chance, if you have questions, you can raise your hand and ask those questions now if you'd like to. Let's see. Anne had mentioned that we will go ahead and email out the link to anyone who registered for the event. Jeff, you have your hand up? And your mute is on, so you'd have to take your mute off.
Okay, would you please explain two questions? Number one, the idea that this draft EIS covers that more limited area where the project area is much wider, including folks like us in Cottonwood County. And then number two, because of that, would there be any advantage for us as constituents in our localities to contact our elected officials at this point to say, Cottonwood County Board of Commissioners, Highwater Township Board, blah, blah, blah. If you're able to, can you send a response to this that raises concerns about the CO2 pipeline?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Great question. Thank you, Jeff. So for your first question, yes, this As some of you who have followed along know, this DEIS only looks at the Otter Tail-Wilkin County portion of the project. Cure and others tried to explain to the PUC that this is really a larger project than that. It's not just Otter Tail and Wilkin. We know that Summit has plans, very specific plans for it to go through Jackson to Candy-Ojai County and then in Martin County. And they were not persuaded, despite that. But I think it's definitely still relevant. If folks want to include that in their comments, definitely welcome to say, hey, you know, it's part of under what's called cumulative impacts, but you can put it kind of wherever. But that this really needs to consider all parts of the pipeline project, including Jackson and Candy-Ojai and in Martin County. And then the second part of your question, yes, I think it makes sense for folks not in Otter Tail and Wilkin to comment. You know, these things are still, a lot of these issues we'll probably see come up with the other parts of the project. And I think it does make sense, you know, if you're worried, you are their constituents for your legislators, for your county boards. If you have concerns, absolutely feel like you should feel like you can and should raise them. Yeah. I hope that helps, Jeff. Thanks. Any other questions? I have read the DEIS, so not as closely enough to answer all your specific questions, but I can do my best for sure.
I had a question, Sarah.
Yeah, go for it, please.
You said Summit says they'll supply you with the CO2 monitor. When I read it, it said they recommend you have one.
Okay, yep. So the part, I believe it's chapter 8, is the like emergency response part. They said that they will provide, it might even be in Appendix G. They said that they will provide for folks who live within 1,000 feet. So my guess is that for those who live outside of 1,000 feet, they recommend it. But that's a good point. I'll go ahead and double check that because that would be an interesting, yeah, if there's a discrepancy there, good to note.
Thank you.
Sarah, there was also a question about, and maybe you answered it here, about somebody was just wondering about how tomorrow's webinar is going to differ from the information you're presenting tonight as well.
It'll be mostly the same. We designed it so that it's more in the middle of the day for like a lot of our partner organizations because not all of them are tracking it. But for folks who weren't able to come to this tonight or are having trouble getting on, it will cover most of the same information. I might do a little bit more on content, like more of the technical side of things. But if you want to hear me talk again, you're welcome to show up. But I think we'll record that as well. Anne, correct me if I'm wrong. Yeah, okay, Peg's nodding. Great. So that'll be up later too.
I know that many of you are not in the Otter Tail to Wilkin County footprint. And so I would just reiterate the fact that you have every opportunity to address the cumulative impacts because that is actually in the DEIS. And you could document the fact that you know that easements have been negotiated for more than the last 2 years, and that the intent has been out there for that long for this project to be 240 miles, and that you're concerned or disappointed. I don't want to put words in your mouth. You have to come up with those yourself, but whatever it is, because we did our best effort to try to challenge the PUC and they denied our challenge. So they need to hear from individuals in the footprint, and that would be you. So if you're willing to address that, that would be great. There's just other things too, like the topography in Otter Tail and Wilkin County is much different than Jackson County. And so if this project you know, how much of this process is going to set precedent for the rest of the route? That's another question we don't have any answer to, and we don't know really. But these are all things to think about, and you certainly are within your rights to comment on them.